At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is filmmaker Craig Williams. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stuart.
We are here to talk about your short movie, The Wyrm, as I'm allowed to call it, and The Wyrm of Bwlch pen Barras.
Yeah, that's it.
Please play it back in real time so people can hear what it really sounds like when it's said with confidence.
It's The Wyrm of Bwlch pen Barras.
Superb. Now, people with an ear for language, certainly in the United Kingdom, will get that is Welsh language, and this is a Welsh language folk horror movie. We will talk about the process of making that movie, and we will also be talking about 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life, won't we, Craig?
Yeah, exactly.
Without further ado, let us enter into the world of The Wyrm. First off, do you want to give us a brief synopsis as to what The Wyrm is all about?
Yeah, The Wyrm is it kind of plays out like a modern day gangster film, I suppose, until it becomes more folk horror later. It's about 3 men who are undertaking an awful assignment, which involves them kidnapping someone and taking them up to a mountain in Wales.
Now, this is a short film, and obviously short films generally are available either festivals or packages and whatever. So how can people see The Wyrm, and where is it available?
So if you're in the UK, US, Canada, and Ireland, it is streaming on Arrow Player. And if you're in the US, or you're willing to import from the US, it's on the Severin Films box set, All the Haunts Be Ours, Volume 2. Which is a wonderful box set anyway, and I'd thoroughly recommend it, even if The Wyrm wasn't on there.
Yeah, how many? That's Volume 2, isn't it? Of sort of classic folk horror films they've pulled together. How many films are on there along with your film?
I think there's a lot. I think there's like 20 or 30. It's just amazing. I think like the work that Killer Janice has done on this, it's redefined what folk horror is, because we're so used to hearing the same old things trotted up all the time in the folk horror context, which is, it's useful if you're getting into stuff, but for anyone who wants to go a bit deeper, I think the work that she's done with her film Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched, which accompanied the first volume of the box set and then the second volume of the box set, it made it more of an international thing rather than just the same 3 films we've heard about time and time again.
Yes, I used to do a format before I was more broad with my title of 5 great British horror films. And there are only so many times that you want to discuss Wicker Man, Witchfinder General, and Blood on Satan's Claw, which I think are the 3 you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, they're amazing. They are like absolutely totemic films. There's no doubt about that. And I've used them in describing this because it's a helpful shorthand and things. But you think like the world has to be more expansive than that, especially if you're looking to make newer versions and take folk horror in different directions and learn about other cultures through it as well.
No, certainly. I mean, Killer Janice has been on the podcast talking about that documentary, and when we spoke, I mean, one of the things that I certainly learned from that kind of broadening of what we determine as being folk horror made me also understand how I would say Britain collectively, but I think it probably is England, because of the kind of colonial attitude where we just basically nick it, kill it, whatever it is. And our attitude to sort of folk demons and folk lore is very much about chop the tree down, kill it, burn it, whatever. Whereas once you what I got from Woodlands was this idea that folk horror could be about symbiosis and being at one with nature, not needing to destroy it because we just don't like what we don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. And which makes it like a more enticing genre as well, then, doesn't it? Because you can take it in so many different directions. Although I have to admit, I do like the Kim Newman description of English folk horror, which is townies go to the country. That's like, it's always that, go to the country and don't like what they see.
Indeed. Which is a more comical way of describing what Carolyn Glover said in her Urbanoia, which is, the townies go to the rural thing, and then the rural takes its revenge for all the things that we've imposed on rural living. Anyway, let us focus on your film, The Wyrm. So it's a short film, 14 minutes. It's in Welsh language. So where does the kernel of an idea begin for you in terms of making this, writing the script and then producing the movie? Where does it begin for you?
Well, this is something I've wanted to do my whole life, but I did it when I was 37, 38. It was just it's something I'd been thinking about for a very long time, but just kind of assumed this is not for me. This is for real filmmakers and people who have studied it and things. And then it just got to the stage where I was writing scripts, and then just kind of saving them on my computer and just not thinking about it again. And then I was in Fright Fest a few years ago, and I thought, I come to Fright Fest every year. I get so inspired by everything, especially like the low budget horror that people make. I get so into it, and then I think, why don't I actually do something with that inspiration? And then after my son was born, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to do it. This time, I'm actually going to do it. And The Wyrm is set in my hometown, which is Ruthin in North Wales, and I kind of spent 20 years of my life there. I know the place inside out. Yeah. I know who those characters are. So it seemed like quite a natural fit, and it came very, very quickly. The one big change is it was set in the 15th century when I first wrote it, and I changed that afterwards. The highfalutin answer is I changed it because I read a book called Brittle with Relics by Richard King, which is an amazing oral history of Wales. But another part of that answer is I love shots in cars. I love shots of people driving in cars, shots outside of cars. So I thought, well, I've got to do that if I'm actually gonna put it up and make my first film.
Oh wow! I mean, that's amazing then, because in a way, I think the power of the film you've made is so much greater set in a contemporary setting, because that's where your reversal of all our expectations is in your movie.
I hope so, because that's the balance I was trying to strike as well, was to kind of, it's such a traditional folk horror idea, kind of a very basic folk horror idea even. So I wanted to do something, I wanted to have enough things that were different and enough things that were modern, so it didn't feel like pastiche. So they've got, the modern car, the mobile phones and everything. I've not done anything with like robes or anything like that. There's no like big chanting or anything. It's just like normal three like ordinary blokes who seem like they're absolutely sick of it and fed up with having to do it. And then, I've got a few more traditional folk horror stuff on top of that, where I've used the Hammer style credits and things, and obviously where the film goes.
Well, and also stylistically, you've shot it on Kodak, which is, in the 21st century isn't always necessary. So the first question, and also it's not that it's gone, but it is, if you're trying to make a low budget movie, then choosing to shoot on film isn't necessarily the way to maintain that. So, but you obviously did. So let's start with that question first. Why shoot on Kodak and not shoot digitally?
I just think it looks amazing. I think it looks much better. I think when you're making short films, there's people try and do so many different things for production value. And one of the things at the moment seems to be there's a drone shot in every short film, and it always seems to be to give a sense of production value.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of think shooting on film gives something production value because it looks like it was, it looks like it's from a different era and things. And I guess the funny thing with 16mm film is this is a format that was once the domain of like student filmmakers, underground filmmakers, pornographers, but now it's like a rarefied thing because it's it's much harder to shoot on film. But I love films I love the kind of genre films, psychotronic films from the 70s and the 60s. So there's a part of me does want to recreate that look, but also I just think 16mm looks great. I love the grain. I love the way colors come out on it. It transfers really well to digital as well, which is not always the case with 35mm. So I just love shooting a film. I've not done anything digitally. I've just finished my second film now, and that was film as well. So I've no idea how to shoot digitally.
So in that sense, then, conversations with your DOP, Sean Bryce Williams, about the cinematography. I mean, you've mentioned some of the references and the things that you're sort of, I guess, beholden to and want to emulate and hark back to. So with that in mind, then, what were the conversations like with Sean about what you wanted to achieve? Because one of the first things that struck me, and it plays into what you're saying, is that when it started, I was like, oh, it's like watching one of the BBC Christmas stories from the 70s. I got that feeling right away because the texture of what I'm looking at was evidently not as clean and sharp, which is I mean that as a compliment, obviously not as a criticism. Because you go, there's something organic going on, which obviously plays into what you're actually making a story about as well. I mean, I know they don't all have to link up in such a way, but in this instance, it works. So. What apart from just saying, hey, I like those films from back then, what other things do you discuss with your DOP in terms of what you've been able to achieve on screen?
Sean's a terrific guy, and we seem to talk with each other entirely in really obscure film references or 70s prog rock records.
Okay.
So we just tend to find like the most specific film examples that we can think of and make it more, rather than say, oh, we're going to copy this, we're going to use this shot from this film or anything like that. What we're talking about is like a feeling, like a kind of a certain feeling or a certain atmosphere that a certain film has. And Sean's very, I think he's a bit of an Anglophile. He seems to know a hell of a lot about like obscure British television and stuff as well. So it's just a matter of kind of just throwing all these things out there and discussing them with each other, discussing what we love about them with each other, and then just taking it from there. But I think that is the easier part of filmmaking is the talking about other films part. And then occasionally there'll be times on set where there's an opportunity to do a little maybe a little tribute to someone that we both love, and then we will do it. I know we're going to talk about Jess Franco later, and we've got like what I would call a Jess Franco Zoom in the Wyrm, and I know that's just there for me. It's just it's not there for anyone else. So I like doing those little things as well.
I have to ask, in what way did prog rock influence how it looks and feels?
It's So I sent when I was sending Sean some films that I was thinking of, I also sent him some records that just like that I think conjure up a certain kind of mood. And I think I think we hit it off after that. He's really into like the deeper and weirder it goes into 70s prog and prog folk stuff. It's very helpful. A lot of those records are quite scary, like Comus and the Mike Stevens record, Outlander, Jade Warrior, some of like the weirder, forgotten prog stuff, Focus, some Hawkwind. It's important, I think, to think about lots of different influences. I don't see influences like something that you're taking from something else. It's just all these things that come in together and end up creating a mood.
Yeah, and because ultimately you'll bring yourself to the table. I mean, an example that always makes me smile is the band The Happy Mondays went in the studio to emulate Sly and the Family Stone, and what came out was The Happy Mondays. It was
exactly.
You can probably spot the references if you look hard enough, but ultimately something of them came out in the process of trying to emulate them. Now, with feature films, the edit is a big part of the process, in the sense of you can write the stuff, you can write the script, you can produce the movie, and then there's another discovery in the edit. How much was revealed in the editing process that you couldn't have foreseen in the script stage, or what was revealed even?
We didn't actually look into post until we'd actually finished filming the film. I say we, I mean me and my friend and producer Julian Allen, who kind of we make these films together. Even though he's listed as producer and I'm listed as director, we both do everything together in collaboration with Sean, the DP. So the week after we finished shooting, we started putting down the names of editors that we like, and we both had Matthias Fekete on the top of that list, who edits Peter Strickland's films. I thought, Peter Strickland's films are very fluent in 70s genre stuff, 70s kind of psychotronic cinema, shot on film. I thought this would be someone, a kindred spirit who could help us. So it was basically the amazing work that he did on the various cuts that showed me what could be done in an edit. I was quite naive. I didn't really know what I was doing when I was making suggestions and things. But it was the kind of the different things that he was showing us that we could do with it.
Yeah.
That's what showed me just how powerful an edit can be. Now,
you said at the beginning that you just decided you should get on and do it, as opposed to keep writing these scripts and just have them on your computer. This is a fairly accomplished piece of filmmaking, if you don't mind me saying. So what were you doing to hone these skills that made you ready? I get the impression you were saying you didn't go to film school or anything like that. Is that what you were saying?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer in my day job.
Indeed. Okay. So you as a lawyer in your day job, what are you doing then to hone your skills that made you ready for this? Because like I say, it's a very accomplished piece of filmmaking.
The simple answer is I just watch loads and loads of films. I read a lot about films. I read a lot about the making of films, especially in the kind of the areas that I'm interested in, which is horror, genre, kung fu, exploitation, anything vaguely cultish. And then when it comes to the practical day-to-day things of filmmaking, I just kind of looked it up and then relied on people who are in the crew and asked them a lot of questions. So just ask them what they're looking for as part of their job, and then just kind of picked it up from there, really. But I think based on what I'd watched and what I did know, I knew what would look good to me, what I would want to see in a film, what would sound good. And it was just a matter of putting a crew together to be able to achieve that.
You make that sound so simple, but it really isn't.
It's not. It's a really challenging thing, and it's a very vulnerable making thing to do as well.
That's kind of what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting at. Really, is that you can find the people, and it's great that you can be working with, say, the editor who's with Peter Strickland, or someone like Sean, who you can you can speak in a shorthand. But that isn't. Whenever you look out at an industry you don't understand, I guess you had a confidence in what good movies were because you had taste. I mean, a producer I work with always says this. He says, we've got nothing if we haven't got our taste. Because if we can't lean into that when we're trying to justify what we're doing, then we're just we might as well be making tins of beans. It's like if you take a Jess Franco moment is what you want to capture here, or it's this, that, or the other, then that's kind of it. But there is an achievement in it, but then you think like you might be intimated. There's a limit to what it is because it's a stepping stone to what you do next, and that's all. All great art is just a work in progress to your next work in progress to your next work in progress, and hopefully the measure is, was it better than the last one? I mean, that's kind of it, really, isn't it? But let me not drag you down to the too pessimistic level, and just say that it's a really accomplished piece of filmmaking. So congratulations.
Thank you. I think there was also a sense that because I'd waited so long, I had to throw a lot at it.
Okay.
Because I didn't have the kind of, I didn't want to just make something tiny and then something slightly bigger and things. I knew that if I was going to do this, that it would take so much energy and things and money to be able to actually do it. I thought, well, we need to really think about this and be very determined about how we do it and try and be as professional as possible. Just we had to go big, or there was
or go home.
Been a lot
go big or go home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I was part of the European Genre Forum this year, and one of the talks we had was about financing. And the guy that was doing the finance talked a lot about, if you make your film English language, you open it up to a bigger market.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then you restrict its potential market. Now, obviously, short films aren't governed by the same market pressures as a feature film, but they still go out to international film festivals and the like. So what was the importance to you? And I mean, you're from Wales, so that makes it, that doesn't need to be justified any more than that. But just because it's such an important part of the film as you watch it, the language it's in, was what was important about not compromising that element to your film?
The film was written in English, and we cast Welsh language actors, but on the basis that we'd be filming it in English. And the night before we started shooting, one of the lead actor, Bryn Vaughan, who's like a kind of Welsh language hero and activist and things, he said to me, "Would you be willing to shoot an English and the Welsh version back to back?" Oh, and I said, "Well, yeah, I definitely thought about this, because I know that they do it on a lot of Welsh language television. But, I thought it might be too much to ask for everybody to have to do the same thing back to back." But he was like, no, it'll work really well. So we shot every single line of dialogue once in English and in Welsh.
Amazing.
And then we edited both versions afterwards. I was convinced that we would end up sending the English one out. But as I was watching the two versions come together, I realized that it was much better. The Welsh one was far superior to the English one. And now I keep, unless like something like this comes up, I keep forgetting that there was an English version. I keep forgetting that it was in English from the outset, and that we've got this. There's just one cut on my desktop now that's the Welsh version. It's not even great. That's the English version. It's not even graded. So I wish I could say like, oh, it was Welsh from the beginning and stuff, but
no, that's even better. That's even better to me, because it's kind of it evolved out of the project as a story of developing a film. I mean, the fact, if that actor hadn't asked you, there wouldn't be one, would there? I mean, it's kind of just interesting for it to emerge out of that. And you may well have thought it, but I imagine you were inexperienced when I thought, hold on, let's just get this film shot, and then
exactly. It was too much to ask. I thought it was too much to ask. I thought like, I can't throw this on people. I'll look like such an amateur if I turn to them now and say, why don't we do this? But it was great because they all translate, because we didn't have time to just translate the script there and then, because they're all bilingual anyway. They translated their own lines. So it meant that it sounds better. It just sounds better because everyone's doing it in their own language. Everyone's translating it the way they see it. So it just made the English script better because they were kind of modulating it themselves. And I've written a feature film that's going to be in Welsh, and that's, so there's a bit more, it's made me more determined to do another one, to do another film in Welsh, because I'm convinced that some places took it just because it was in Welsh and it was something a bit different. But I was kind of very pleased. I was very pleased with it afterwards. It was kind of a relief that I went in that direction. I thought, I'm so glad that I listened to Bryn and that I trusted the actors and things, because I think it's made a better film.
Yeah. I mean, I can't compare it. I can only say that the results are great to you. And I think the opposite to that advice of, wanting to find the bigger audience is that if you do something well and it might well sit in a niche, it means that everybody looking for that thing that's not like everything else will want to see it. I mean, I was lucky enough to have Mark Jenkins on talking about both Bait and I forgot the other name. I forgot the name of the second film. Ennis Main, yeah. Thank you. And his decision to work on out-of-date 16mm stock and not sync up the dialogue for Bait was purely his own. Nobody would advise you to do that. Nobody with any sense. And then he premieres to a sellout crowd in Berlin. So it's like, well, that was right then, wasn't it? But you could never have guessed that was right. And I think if you've got that, I guess if you've got conviction in your vision and you go for it, then there is that reward. Well, sir, thank you very much for sharing those stories and insight into the making of The Wyrm. Do you want to remind people how they can see it?
Yep, you can stream it on Arrow player or buy the All the Haunts Be Ours Volume 2 disc from Severin.
Right then, Craig, we are now going to look at 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Those are, and for those that haven't heard this before, Craig has given me 3 films to choose from. He will be doing them in the order he gave them me. And every time we hear this sound, that will mean 5 minutes have passed and it's time to move on to the next film. Does that seem fair to you, Craig?
Yeah, that's fair to me.
The first choice is features on the director of photography, a guest I've had on the podcast twice, who talked about this film and the making of it. He's been a collaborator with the director, dating back to Barry Lyndon, which is a huge clue. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman signed open-ended contracts. They agreed to work on this project until Stanley Kubrick released them from it. And however long that turned out to be, which is amazing. I don't know if you know this, but it is also got the world record for the longest constant movie shoot at 400 days. So it's quite a good idea that this contract was signed, even though they probably regretted it at some point. It is the story of a Manhattan doctor who embarks on a bizarre night-long odyssey after his wife's admission of unfulfilled longing. I'm talking about Stanley Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut, from 1999. Kubrick, Cruise, Kidman, What's Not to Love? Tell us, Craig, why does this film have such an impact on you and why does it have such fond memories?
So I think when I was kind of 12, 13 was when I was starting, when film was becoming not just a love, but an absolute obsession. Yeah. And it was the first time I started looking back at older films. So it was the first time I was getting into Scorsese and Coppola and things, and then Kubrick. And Eyes Wide Shut was the first new Kubrick film since I'd been kind of into film. So it was something that I was super excited for, to be able to experience that for the first time. So it's like a very pivotal moment when I watched it. And I became absolutely obsessed with it at the time. I used to cut out the bits on the film from like the Radio Times and newspapers and things and stuck them on my wall. I can still even remember some of the headlines. I don't know what it was about it then. It's been my favorite film ever since. Still is today. I think it has some kind of like occult energy to it. The kind of like it hides some kind of truth or some kind of knowledge that's there. I think all the time about that's the password for admittance, but what's the password for the house? You know, that could be from a religious text. It's so good. It's so mysterious, and like it's kind of embarrassing. I've suffered various kind of OCD stuff throughout my life, and it often manifests in like, you know, paranoia and things, and it stopped me from doing things. It stopped me from making films for years and things. But it does mean that I'm always very drawn to these films and works of art where there's a kind of a hidden hand or a conspiracy or people being controlled or fate being controlled. And I think that's where it starts. It starts in Eyes Wide Shut. That's there in that film. And it's just stayed special to me all the way through my life. It's the first tattoo I ever had. I live near Childwickbury now, which is Kubrick's house. They have an arts fair there in the summer. My kid's been there. They put the masks from Eyes Wide Shut on all the mannequins around, which is a beautiful thing. And that's my kid met Jan Harlan there. And last week when I wrapped shooting on my film, I was taking the DP, Sean Price Williams, back to Heathrow Airport, and we stopped off by the gates of Childwickbury on the way back, just to acknowledge, acknowledge the cinema gods on the way. And that gate is in the film as well. It's just a hugely important film to me, and I'm glad that it's kind of canon now, because it was kind of ridiculed for a while, wasn't it? And now it is. I think it's seen as the absolute masterpiece that it is.
Yeah, and it went through a bit of a kind of David Bowie phase, didn't it? Where everyone went, "Oh, you're rubbish now. You're rubbish. Just stop doing it." It kind of,
exactly.
It's like we've got all the canon we already want. We don't need any more.
No, it's really strange.
I think it still is a bit of a Marmite movie, to be honest with you. I think I loved it, but I remember at the time it was, and I guess it's that whole idea of if you're gonna judge somebody on against everything they've done that's already good in its own way, shape and form, then you've there's that boring thing of, the way that AC/DC deliver the same album all the time. I mean, filmmakers are not allowed to deviate, are they? But whereas, musicians tend to get away with that.
And you kind of think, like, I'm sure, like, if someone was 14 watching Full Metal Jacket for the first time, they'd have the same relationship with that film. It just hit me. It hit me at the right time. And, I have similar, I probably overrate things like Bringing Out the Dead for the same reason, because it was the first Scorsese I saw in the cinema.
There's your first 5 minutes, so well done.
There we are.
Your second choice is the first part in a trilogy of movies about the three mothers. It is the story of an American newcomer to a prestigious German ballet academy who comes to realise that the school is a front for something sinister amid a series of grisly murders. It's the Italian giallo Suspiria, written and directed by Dario Argento. This blew my mind. The original idea was that the ballet school would accommodate young girls no older than 12. And the producer says, no, you're not, because if you have that much violence involving children, we won't get the film out. So he shifted the age, but not the dialogue. So that's why you get this kind of childlike infantilization of the way they talk. And he also raised the height of the door handles, so the girls always had to be lean, which is mad, it gives you that eerie and uncanny. But anyway, Suspiria, tell me why it has such an impact on you and why you have such fond memories for it.
So when I was growing up, my mother was a lecturer in Italian and French, so she would record all the French and Italian films that would be on BBC Two over in the evenings. So I ended up seeing quite a lot of the kind of the more respectable arty side. But later, when I was about 19 or so, I first watched Suspiria, and I love cinema when it's like a pure mode of sensation. When it's like it's the base art form, and it should be. It's a moving image and a solitary spectator. So that idea of the voyeur and things is just baked into it. It's in that prurience. It's in the very essence of it. And in Suspiria, I see that played out on a huge scale, like this kind of phantasmagoria of all the things that I love about genre films. That kind of the heightened style, the operatic violence, the occult references, just a single-minded dedication to pure sensation. And Argento is a genius at that. And this is not the only film where that's evident, but it was the first one, and it had an impact on me. It gave me, I think, the most lasting thing that Suspiria gave me was a kind of a license to watch films in a way that spoke to me. So it wasn't, following kind of critical thought on what was good and what wasn't, but on watching, looking out for the things that I love in genre films. You see, like a lot of genre-phobic critics will use certain terms to denigrate genre, like, there's no characterization here, or it's style over substance and things.
Yeah.
Argento and Suspiria, this is the film where it takes all that and shows you that none of this stuff matters. You can, if you're on that wavelength, if you're a part of the kind of the secret psychotronic club, then this one's for you. And I think this is the beginning of a taste that would just continue to develop and be my main mode of film watching up until today.
It's interesting because when if you look at it from a positive point of view, it's sort of saying to get something out of this film, you have to engage with it. You have to do some work, which is get what you want out of it, not get what you have. It's not that there's an intent. There's you take what you want, not what you have to.
You feel it. You kind of, like, it sounds pretentious, but you're invited to feel it. You're invited to be taken away on those, like, on the amazing music and the colors and the violence and the style and things. It's just, I think all those things together are just absolutely incredible. I love it. I love the sequel, the first sequel, Inferno, and I love the reimagining as well. I think that's kind of brilliant in its own way.
It's interesting. We talk about the loudness. When they were on set filming it, he would play the Goblin score full blast while shooting to scare a performance out of people. It's sort of, actors were saying, I can't remember whether it was the lead or not, was saying that because the film was going to get dubbed, it didn't matter that there was other noise going on while you made the movie.
It's amazing. That score is absolutely incredible. It was my ringtone for like a decade. I had to change it because I was just associating it with my phone ringing after a while. But yeah, it's a perfect film, and I think it's just absolutely definitive about my taste in film. I love Argento.
And just thinking about what you were saying before about your conversations with your cinematographer, apparently Argento turned around to Luciano Tovoli and asked him to watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from 1937 to get the colour scheme.
You can see it.
Exactly. It's about that idea of, I guess, give it, without being too flippant about it. It's like the idea of giving zero fucks is to go, actually, what I want is I want a horror film that takes from Snow White, the Walt Disney movie. I mean, and then then you compute that and it becomes Suspiria. It's like, it's not.
Yeah.
And I guess there's with your first two films that, in Suspiria, I guess it's the use of red, and in Eyes Wide Shut, it's the use of blue, isn't it?
Yeah, and purple in both. Purple's like the connective tissue, I think, in both. As it is weirdly in the third film as well. I've just realised it's the.
Oh wow! Okay.
She wears that big kind of like coat, the big purple coat.
Let us move on to your final choice. After a doctor commits suicide when his research using human embryos is terminated, his widow seduces, then kills the four physicians. Kills the four physicians she holds responsible for his downfall. Does that do She Killed in Ecstasy justice? This West Germany Spanish co-production, Germany's language movie directed by prolific Spanish filmmaker Jess Franco. Tell us, where does this one fit in Craig's canon?
So, I mean, very highly. But I think when you're thinking about films that define your adult life, it's like a big question. But I think when you keep watching lots of films throughout your life, there are going to be some filmmakers that become definitive to you later on.
Yeah.
And when I kind of look back, I'm going to turn 40 this year, and if I look back at like the last 10 years, there are some filmmakers I got into in the last decade that have become like absolute canon for me now. Like, and some of those would be Alan Clark, Jean Rollin, Joe Sarno, but like the one that stands above all those is Jess Franco. I kind of started getting into him very, very slowly about 10 years ago, and then in the last few years, it's just gone into overload. Getting into Jess Franco is now like the defining filmmaker of my kind of film watching and filmmaking life. I'm absolutely in love with the guy. This particular film is from, I think, what a lot of people would see as his golden era, when he had a lot of really great films, real kind of lightning in a bottle type films. And one of the few he made with Soledad Miranda before she died. I think she's absolutely luminous in it. She's an incredible presence in the film. Again, Franco was amazing at taking ideas from pulp novels and pulp cinema and things and turning them into his very own kind of perverted version of the world. The idea, I know that I find that a lot of people kind of ridicule him for it, but I find it inspiring beyond belief. That Franco made sometimes 10 films a year. I think he made like nearly 200 films.
Yeah, I was going to say, total. If you're working through his canon, then that's a long way to go, isn't
it? Yeah, exactly. And, that doesn't mean they're all going to be, good or whatever. But then there's a kind of, I think you get on a certain wavelength with Franco. And once you're on that wavelength, I think you find his stuff. I think it gets under the skin. And I feel like I see the beauty in the work now, especially when he operates the camera himself, which he did when he didn't have the money when he didn't have money people breathing down his neck. I mean, the film he shot the year he died, he shot from his wheelchair himself, like with the camera himself in his own house. That's like just an incredibly moving thing to me. There's a specific magic and beauty to his cinema. And yeah, I feel like I'm still learning about him, and I'm still taking loads from him. And it's because of people like Stephen Thrower and David Gregory at Severin, that's the reason that in the English-speaking world we get to kind of revisit these great Franco films now, because they put them out in editions that, where they get like the respect that I think they deserve.
What was it? Obviously, this film captured you, but then as you began to watch more of Jess Franco's work, what was the penny that dropped for you in terms of what it is he's doing as a filmmaker that makes him appealing to you?
I think he has an eye. He has a definite eye for things, a real good kind of pop art eye for things, but it's also just feeling. I think when you're looking through a camera, when you're looking at the films where he's operating the camera itself, it's like you're following his own interest in what's going on. And I think that's that's such an interesting thing. Like, and it's a lot subtler than you'd expect as well, because obviously he's working in a very disreputable genre and stuff, and he loves that, and he wallows in it. And I just think it takes quite a lot to pull art out of that, which he does, I think.
So how and when do you first see She Killed in Ecstasy? Because this wouldn't have been on BBC Two, would it? It's a videotape.
No, I watched it about 6 years ago for the first time. I got the Severin Blu-ray of it, so it would be whenever that came out.
Okay.
And
finish your thought.
And I've just ended up watching it quite a number of times in the last few years, probably like, I don't know, 10, 15 times. Just sometimes I just put it on just in the background because it's a nice, it's very inspiring, I think.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you for sharing the 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. And thank you for giving us an insight into The Wyrm. Let's remind people, how can they see The Wyrm?
See The Wyrm on Arrow Player, streaming on Arrow Player, or on Blu-ray from Severin Films in the All the Hornsby Hours Volume 2 set. And
just one last thing before we go, what can you tell us anything about what you've got in the pipeline? Any news that you can share? Anything that people can be looking for on the horizon?
Yeah, so I just finished shooting my next short film last week.
Congratulations!
It's called The Fairy Moon. Thank you. It's called The Fairy Moon. It stars the great James Swanton, Johnny Vivace, and one of my absolute heroes, Julia Davis. Shot again on 16mm by Sean Price Williams. It's a lot wilder than The Wyrm. It's a lot stranger. So I'm kind of we're editing that at the moment. So I'm hoping to get that finished so I can get it out in festivals towards the end of summer.
Brilliant. Well, look, it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving us your time on the Britflix podcast.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for having me on.
Hey there, Hugh from Moderation here. If you like today's show, then why not have a listen to Why We Roll, the dedicated TTRPG design podcast. It's hosted by White and Chris, 2 professional TTRPG designers, and it's all about talking to the people that make our favourite games in the tabletop world and understanding what goes into that decision-making process, how you build something that's not just fun to play, but fun to experience, and we're not talking about how we roll, but learning why exactly we make those decisions. Check it out on our website at podderation.com.